back, everyone, to 1 Minute Recess, where we dive into the news, politics, and off the record moments shaping Nevada and beyond. My name is Annette Magnus.
And I'm Mayte, short for Maria Teresa, and we'll explore, like we do every week, what the heck is going on up in Carson City during those not so 1 minute recesses, and both on and off the floor, from political drama, chaos all over the place, all over the country. We're here to ask what the fuck's going on out there. So, Annette, let's get into it. It's been an exciting day and week since we last talked, huh?
It's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare, Maria. So let's get to the recess right now, where we talk about all things NV Ledge here in Carson City. I am still at the building because we are a week away from Sine Die. And we have our special guest. We had him on our first show to talk about all the political drama happening at the Nevada legislature, and now he's back. We have Steve Sebelius with us, reporter for Channel 13 in Las Vegas, longtime friend of ours. We're going to talk all things Nevada legislature and give you the rundown as we start to wrap up the NV Ledge here in just a few days. So, Steve, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. You guys have my favorite podcast. So once I get on strict scrutiny with those ladies, that's my bucket list. I'll be done.
So there's a lot to talk about. I've been working on several bills. You and I have been texting about several things that are going on up here this week. I know Maria and I have been watching lots of stuff. How is the home stretch looking? Because I feel like we're a little bit behind where we're supposed to be normally.
Yeah, I think so too. At the very beginning, a lot of the leaders were saying, well, this is great. We have a new person in charge of the division of LCB that writes bills. And we've been getting bills out a lot more quickly than we had before. All these bills are coming out. And it seemed like there were more at the beginning. But now we're in that same part of the session where everything is log jammed. The last I checked, and this is going to be inaccurate, but I think there were about 800 bills left that hadn't died at the deadline, and they've been introducing new ones. The assembly got to 600. I don't know if they've gotten to 600 in the past, but there is AB 600, and now it's just at the end it's log jamming because about 400 plus had exemptions and were in the money committees, which is and those Ways and Means and Finance have these long lists of bills that they're going to have to get through. And poor Governor Joe Lombardo is going to get a crush of bills in these and he has 5 days while they're in session to decide whether to sign or veto, and then 10 days after they adjourn. But that's still not a lot of time to go through literally hundreds of bills. So it'll be interesting to see if they finish on time. If I think they will need a special session, but perhaps not right after this session. I think it probably, because a lot depends on what happens with the federal government and the big, beautiful bill and all of that, and how much money the state's going to get. And so when the federal fiscal year starts in October, then I think the state, or our state, will have to come back and deal with all the money that they lost, that's been cut from social programs and food programs and all those necessary programs to hand out the tax cuts. So it'll be interesting to think. But there could be a really quick special session because you have all these things coming down at the end, and we've all been there on closing night, right? And the clock's going towards midnight. You're looking at your watch. You got your list of bills that still have yet to happen, and we've all been there at midnight where people are standing around saying, did my bill pass? Did it pass? Or wait, did they not pass it? What happened? And we come back the next day around 9 or 10 a.m. bleary-eyed, and they do a quick special session of a few hours to finish up what they failed to get done by deadline.
Have you ever seen this many bills? I'm trying to rack my brain. I was talking to the esteemed Maggie Carlton this week about this. I don't think I've ever seen this many money bills get pulled into ways. And maybe it's to kill them, maybe it's to work on them, maybe it's because truly they had fiscal notes and now they've been worked off. But I have never seen, and one of my really important bills, the psychedelic pilot program bill, is currently stuck in Ways and Means. And so obviously that's something I'm watching very closely. But have you ever seen it like this?
I've seen a lot of bills sort of shunted off to Ways and Means as a way of beating the deadline. But I mean, last I checked, about half of the bills. That's a huge number of bills that are in the money committees, and some, as you point out, have legitimate reasons. but others I think are there just either to dodge a deadline or to hold them hostage to the very end and then kill them slowly one by one, as their demands are not met or whatever.
So, while we're on the subject of the ways and the means to pay for things with the negative couch paintings we'll probably have, what is your take? And this is probably for both of you, but Steve, you're a special guest. You can go first. What are your predictions on will things make it out? Are there things that are definitely dead? Are there things that have some hope?
Yeah, I've got I'm looking at a list here of this is just a partial list in no particular order of some of the bills that I've been watching. Obviously the film tax credit bills. And when we talk about film tax credit, 90% of the time we're talking about Assemblywoman Sandra Haugety's bill, AB 238, which has the most momentum, the most support. I think that's both are still alive, but I think that's the bill that a lot of people are concentrating on. That's probably the number one bill that I'm watching right now. But there are a ton others that, I had seen earlier in the session, I'd forgotten. There's still a proposal alive to add 18 judges to the bench in Clark County. There's the bill for universal free breakfast and lunch for Nevada students, still alive. My least favorite, the red light cameras and construction zones bill, still alive due to the. I mean, you got to give credit to the Associated General Contractors and their lobbyists for this bill to get this going on, because this proposal has been defeated so many times, and this bill's gotten farther, I think, than any of those other ones. All the governor's bills: crime, economic development, housing, education, healthcare. Speaker Yeager's insulin bill to cap the price of insulin for everybody at $35 a month. And I think I would say probably the ones I'm watching the most. I did a story on this the other day, were the bills vetoed by the governor in 2023. And now that they've come back, either exactly or substantially similar to the form that they were passed in 2023. And so I was asking a lot of the lawmakers, why do you do that? What's the point of that? Isn't it a waste of time? You're bringing the same bills. And they had really good answers. Nicole Canizaro's answer was really good. She said the problems just don't go away just because the governor said no. But I think Sandra Haugety's response was the best. And when she said, I believe in second chances, and we're giving the governor a second chance to do the right thing. I think that's probably the quote of the legislature for me so far. But apparently the joke was on me, because in the very first instance where the governor received a bill that was almost identical, word for word, what he got in 23, he vetoed it in 23. This is the bill to extend fuel tax indexing. And he said this bill should not pass because the voters ought to weigh in on this. And the same bill was presented to him this year. And now apparently we don't need to hear from the voters. 2026 is an election year. We shouldn't do anything to encourage people to go to the polls, for sure. And he signed that bill, which was, you can't get around it. It is a flip flop. Those bills were almost identically the same. And Annette knows this too. And Maria, you've been up there, you know this as well. We've all seen the train coming, right? Where you have the establishment line up behind a bill. You've got all the local governments. You've got the RTC. You've got organized labor. You've got all these people coming and saying, we want this bill. Let's get this bill passed. The governor could easily have said, no, I said before it should go to the voters, and I meant it. It should go to the voters. And then instead, he completely changed his position on that in just 2 years' time. And I think the difference was 2 years ago, there was no consequence. 2 years ago, he could veto it. This thing lasts till 2026. He knew it. So he knew that there would be time if they came back and they brought it again, that he could reconsider it. And I think he was hoping that they would say, okay, well, we're going to go to the people. If you were to ask the people of Clark County, hey, do you want your gas tax not to rise as fast as it otherwise would have? And do you want the RTC to have fewer dollars to tear up all the roads all the time? I don't think there's that thing is like an 80-20 no in Clark County. And I think they knew that. And so the governor kind of saw that writing on the wall and agreed to do it. And I thought that was really interesting. So now we're going to look and we're going to see, and I have the list here. We're going to see whether his position has changed on any of these other bills, like, for example, no guns at polling places. He vetoed
I
that.
can't wait. Those were the first bills he vetoed last session. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say he may sign this one. And I'll tell you why. Even though in his veto message last time, he raised some constitutional issues about it. This bill is clearly within the mainstream of constitutional jurisprudence. No less than a personage as Antonin Scalia himself said, there are certain sensitive places into which firearms should not be prohibited or should not be allowed. That includes schools, federal buildings, airplanes, things of that nature. Well, polling places are clearly can be placed on that list constitutionally. So there's really no constitutional question about it. Last time, this bill was enmeshed with some ghost gun language that has since been obviated because the governor said that the ghost gun language was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court in Nevada said au contraire, and it is constitutional. So now that part is dealt with. So this is a standalone clean bill. I think he may sign this. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But if I'm right, remember I said this. If I'm wrong, delete this entire episode so no one knows.
Let's talk film tax credit, because that is, people are running around this building fast and furious right now trying to make deals.
Well, I see what you
It
did.
moved out of it moved out of ways on Saturday while I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, apparently we're just going to do this on a Saturday, okay. And now it's got to go over to the Senate side, and now I'm hearing they might try and push it together. They might try and combine it with Senator Lang's bill, because Senator Lang was the original author of this, but then it kind of got taken from her and put on the other side. So let's talk politics about film tax credit, and also let's talk about what it does, because it's seen a lot of new amendments and things like that.
Yeah, they have added a lot to this, and this is, somebody was asking me about this bill as opposed to the bill for the Oakland A's and the bill for Legion Stadium. And one of the prime differences is in this case, the applicant, the developer that's at the heart of this, Howard Hughes, partnering with Warner Brothers Discovery and Sony Pictures, has to build a studio, shoot movies, and release content prior to them getting anything. So those things have to happen. The infrastructure has to be there. The hiring has had to have happened. 50% people have to come from Nevada. They've added on things like pre-K fund, which earned the endorsement of the Clark County Education Association. Although, honestly, you guys, you didn't really need to do that. You earned the endorsement of the Clark County Education Association as soon as the Nevada State Education Association came out against the bill. So that was a done deal. But so they've added a lot of things to that, and I think it is a different concept than what we've seen with the sports arenas. Now, are we still subsidizing an industry that's a wealthy, moneyed industry? Yes, this is still a subsidy for an industry that's wealthy and moneyed. And I have been told by the president of Howard Hughes that without this subsidy, they will not build it. They could build it, but they will not build it. So the question then becomes, is this worthwhile? And Annette, I think you raised the other salient point. Roberta Lang brought this 2 years ago. She'd been working on it for much longer than that. And I don't know if we can see a scenario where she is completely shut out of this process. Combining the two bills, I talked to a lobbyist for one of the bills, and this person said they didn't see any way where these two could come together. So there are elements that I think would mesh, would work together if they decided to do it. But there's a lot of resentment here in the way that this thing came about. But I think, for the economic development, this is not the same as some of the other things that we've seen. It's not the same as giving the tax abatements and then hoping that they perform and then trying to claw back money if they don't. This is an upfront deal, and the number of jobs that are involved, and not just regular jobs, high-paying jobs. We have a lot of economic development that brings low-paying jobs here, but we've got a lot of those already. We need higher-paying jobs, and this bill, I think, would do that. So the question becomes: is the price tag too much? I mean, we're talking about 1.6 plus billion. That is a lot of money. When the general fund of the state of Nevada is used to be 12.6, now $12.4 billion. We're talking like a 12th of the general fund. So That's a lot of money, and it's a commitment that's going to bind the state going forwards. There's a lot of hesitation on that, but I also think there's a lot of momentum behind it.
I guess my question is, if you're a lawmaker, right? We were talking about this 2 years ago, and I thought, even though I was at my former employer, I thought this was the better deal than the stadium. Me and Maria have talked about it many times on the show. But how do you look at the people of Nevada with a straight face and say, we can't give your kid free school lunches, we can't properly fund mental health services, we can't do all of the things that we should be doing and are required to do as a state, especially if the federal cuts really do come. But we're going to give $1 billion, industry all these tax incentives to come to Nevada. And it's just, I think that's the part that's still not sitting right with me. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Steve, but like the public perception of this is, yeah, it's cool. And yes, it would be great to have a new industry. And sure, it would be awesome to diversify our economy. But like, is this the right time for that right now?
Yeah, and that's a legitimate question. But I mean, we're talking about the same lawmakers that are going to look the voters in the eye and say, "We promised that we would give you another crack at voting whether or not you wanted to continue this property tax for Metro police officers here in Clark County. We're not giving you that now. We're just going to do it." Well, we're talking about people who are going to look people in the eye and say, "We promised to vote on whether or not you get to extend the fuel indexing." But you know what? Nope, we're not doing that either. And then they can also say, I think on the positive side, they can say, listen, this isn't just giving money out. This is also going to generate money for the state. Now, will it even out? The proponents say yes, but I think we have all learned to be skeptical, right? Going back to the monorail is going to carry X number of people. That true number was X divided by 3. The Bright Line train is going to be great. It's going to carry all these people. It's only going to cost this much. It always costs more. There are fewer riders, and it takes longer than we thought. All those estimates we've learned to be skeptical of. I think in the case of Allegiant Stadium, we can say that even the most skeptical of us have been shown wrong because it's exceeded its expectations in that sense. Whether the A's will do that too, I don't think so, but that's just me. But we've learned to be skeptical about those numbers. But the other thing I think is important about this is not just the tax revenue and the jobs that are coming on with this, the jobs that will be created, but the fact that the state does not currently, the industry, we've been talking about diversifying the economy for so long, and our efforts have resulted in huge subsidies to people like Elon Musk and Apple Computer and the NFL, the MLB. Who knows if the badminton people will come next? Who knows? But the point is that all of those industries are tourist related industries, hospitality related industries related on people with disposable income coming here to Nevada and spending it. And that's great in the good times. We are booming in the good times, but in the bad times, not so much. Well, this is a new industry that can, I'm not going to say is recession proof, but can better weather recessions than can the hospitality industry. I mean, when we were all cooped up during the pandemic, what were we doing? We were like streaming shows and talking to each other about, hey, what shows are you watching? What shows are good? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And that's because Hollywood was still churning. Now, if there's a writer strike or an actor strike, well, then hopefully that doesn't happen in a recession. But by and large, it's a good industry to have. And there are so many advantages that Nevada has that places like Vancouver, British Columbia, or Georgia, or Texas, or other states that are trying to lure film productions to their states don't have, that we do have. And we can capitalize on it. So, but there is a trade-off, and you will have to say, yeah, you know what? We can only give an increase of, I think it was $2 per student for the per pupil funding, and we're already underwater on the per pupil funding by thousands of dollars. And we can't find money to fix that, but we can find money to fix this. That's always been the case. That's always been the case. There was no way in the world that the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip would have agreed to an increase in room tax to help fund education, but they would do it for Allegiant Stadium. That was the only thing that they would agree to do it for. And so the choice really is: do we not do it at all, or do we do it at the expense of state revenue? But revenue that probably, I mean, if anybody thinks they were going to raise taxes in some way, shape, or form to give $1.6 billion to schools, I just don't think that was going to happen. I just don't think that was going to happen anyway. So it's really a choice of, do we do it, or do we continue with the status quo, as opposed to, should we put this money towards this or towards schools, because it's not there to go towards schools. And I say that with a lot of sadness, because the state is behind, and it should fund that, and it should, keep up. I think everybody in the expanded Medicaid program, sorry, I always get that wrong. We should keep that program going, but will we be able to? I don't know. And so that's probably going to be the big hurdle for this bill to overcome, is that question you asked.
So, Steve, the elephant in this conversation in every finance committee that I've ever been in is we don't have money. Even, like you said, in the good times we're booming, but sometimes it doesn't translate to being able to afford those basic things you talked about. And the legislature's always like, this would be lovely, but we need to cut it to this amount or just not do it. Like always, every finance committee, the elephant that we're dealing with. When do you think this state, or if this state will ever grow up and kind of go, maybe we should raise revenue if people don't like the tea?
On top of that question, just to add in, because this is something I watched the last week that I was kind of upset about, Assemblymember Natha Anderson had a great property tax bill that would have went to the voters to fix the system that is currently in place. Could have raised revenue over time. It was killed in the Senate. Why do we keep kicking that can down the road, and why do bills like that continue to die, and why are we not sending stuff to the voters all of a sudden?
Yeah, exactly. Democracy is far too fragile to be trusted to the hands of the average person. Obviously, I think Winston Churchill had that right. But I think the point of that is, you're absolutely right. You would not even have to raise new taxes. Let's just talk about the abatements of existing taxes. Billions of dollars are being abated every year from existing property taxes for something that was good and well intentioned at the time. Our friend Dina Titus was one of the prime movers behind it. In 2005, people couldn't afford the taxes, and they were losing their homes not because they couldn't afford their mortgage, because they couldn't afford the taxes in their houses. So she acted to stop that from happening, and it worked in 2005 and 2006 and 2007, and then all of a sudden, 2008, we have this great recession, and we plummet to depths that we thought we'd never see. And we are still climbing out of that. We're still not back to those pre-recession levels, thanks to those tax abatements. And so that's an issue that needs to be talked about. And you hear it. You hear people on the periphery, smart people, like Guy Hobbs, who was on the Commission on School Funding, talking about, hey, you know what? We really do need to take a look at this. You had Assembly Joint Resolution 1 talking about property values resetting with the sale of the property, sort of a feature that they have in California in Prop 13. In Prop 13, when my mother passed away in 2021, if I had moved into that house, I would inherit not only the house, which was paid off, but the property tax exemption, and would have been paying the pittance that she was paying because her taxes were abated under Prop 13. And when I sold it, those taxes reset, and the poor new owner is paying probably in taxes what I pay for a mortgage here in Las Vegas. So those things need to be addressed. The system that we have with the sales tax, is that a good idea? Was the tax shift of 1981 a good idea? Should we go back to funding things? The fact that we are using sales tax to fund police officers is the equivalent of holding a bake sale, so that the band can go to their competition at the end of the year. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It is an infirm way to pay for something that you are going to need going forward. We don't have that. And so I think the whole system needs an overview, needs to be looked at, because it is just not working. And we find ourselves in this straitjacket every 2 years when we go up there, and maybe more often than every 2 years, because we're going to have this special session if, as we fear, the Republicans in Congress pass a budget that cuts a lot of social services, the state's going to have some hard decisions to make about that. What do they keep the people on the expanded Medicare plan? What do they cut those benefits? What do they have to throw them off entirely? These are choices that they don't want to make. And our tax system does not leave us a lot of leeway. So I think it'd be good to broaden the tax base if we could do that with a new industry to do it. But until we have those conversations and get serious about doing that and have it not just be a few people, but a lot of people talking and the people of Nevada, being shown, hey, this is what we need to do. I think it immediately will meet tremendous resistance in this area. Everybody who is a homeowner is going to resist this. I mean, I was looking the other day at my estimated taxes for the coming year and what I could buy with that money. Let me tell you. And that's 4 times a year. They're quarterly. What I could buy with that money, and I complain about it like Scrooge McDuck every time I have to pay that bill. And if I were to then be told, oh, also your property taxes are going to go up as well, yeah, I would probably not be happy. But because people don't see the things that those are going to, they just see a government wasting that money. They don't see somebody who's on disability getting health care. They don't see shut-ins getting Meals on Wheels. They don't see young students getting into programs early so that they start learning to read earlier so that they succeed later. They don't see the funding for things like the public library. That's just a godsend to all of us. It's such a community resource. They don't see that. You go to the store and, Annette and I, we go to Target and you go to Target and you fill up your cart with stuff. You give them money. You're not happy with the money. It's probably too much, but you have a cart full of stuff. You see it. You take it out to your car. You load it into your car. You see it. You see the transaction. Your taxes, you mail them off to Carson City or to Cincinnati, Ohio, where the IRS office, I'm all too well aware, is located. And you don't see anything. You don't see what you're getting for that because, your water turns on. If you call 911, somebody comes to put out the fire. The kids down the street are actually getting educated. You don't see those things on a day-to-day basis. And so you forget about how much we all rely on those things.
Well, until those conversations happen, Nevada will continue to stand on the streets begging for car washes like this. It's like the high school kids, Centennial High School kid, JROTC does
Well,
on
see, that
my
would be
corner.
something. If you got your car washed, that would be something. That would be something
That's
that,
true. You do get a car wash. Yeah.
tangible.
Maybe the government should have like a marketing plan where they just shut things off and say, see, this is why taxes are good.
They try to do that during the government shutdowns when they say you can't go to Lake Mead. That's part of it. Or when the school board runs out of money, what's the first thing they cut? The most popular programs. Oh, we're not going to be able to have band anymore. Notwithstanding the fact that music education has been shown to help students in math and help their development otherwise. Oh, well, I guess we can't field the football team. And parents are like, oh no, we'll hold the bake sale and do it. But they'll that's what they do. They cut off the thing that you really want to see. It's harder to do at the federal government. It's not like, okay, on Tuesday, we are not going to man any defense installations whatsoever. Nobody at Cheyenne Mountain, Coast Guard's on a PTO. We're standing down at the border. That's just, we can't do that. We can't do that. Now, I think a lot of us wouldn't mind if the IRS took a day off or, two. But we'll see. If we
There
saw
may
it,
not be an IRS anymore after Doge, so you
that's
might get your wish.
That's true. That's true. That's probably the last place the dough should cut, but I don't
Here
think
we are.
they're known for their nuance.
I'm not paying my tax. If Donald Trump doesn't pay his, why should I have to pay mine? Anyways, so what do we think is going to be the end game? What do we think this is all going to be all the marbles? Because I'm sitting here, I'm watching the clock. They're about to go back in the floor. We're filming this at 7:30 on Tuesday night. We still have floor session. I think they still have to wrap up Ways and Means. I don't know what they're doing on the Senate side right now, but I know they've got lots of stuff over there. So what's the end game look like? What are we bartering for? What does the speaker want? What does the majority leader, Nicole Cannizzaro, want? What does the governor want? And how does this all kind of wrap up, Steve?
Yeah, I think all sessions end ugly, and we'll see that it's going to end ugly. I'll be up there, by the way. I should say I'll be up there starting on Saturday. So you know what? Get ready for the my arrival there. I think with Senator Canizaro, I think she and the governor have a high priority on the housing issue, because I think those issues have really come to the fore, and you've seen a number of housing bills, including some were vetoed 2 years ago, come back. So I think they will work out some kind of deal on the housing issue. I think Speaker Yeager would love to have his insulin bill pass, even though insurance companies are not too wild about that. I think a lot of the housing bills in the assembly as well, they want to pass those. Now, whether the governor's going to veto those is another question, because, I can see a scenario in which he basically crosses out the date of his last veto message and staples a photocopy of it with a new date written in to some of these vetoes, to some of these bills, especially some of the housing bills, the ones that require transparency in rental contracts, for example, the habitability of property. We're not seeing the that bill about corporate acquisition of single family homes has run into some trouble. And I understand today I saw a brief video about this, that Senator Ira Hansen expressed concern about that very issue, but said he was voting against a bill that would have prevented that, because he'd been asked to do so by the executive branch, i.e., the governor. Which was surprising to me, honestly, because the governor and I have actually discussed the corporate ownership of housing issue, and he acknowledged to me that he thought it was a problem as well. And so this may be one of those things where, the solution that was proffered is not a solution he would prefer, but clearly that is an issue. Clearly that has become an issue in Clark County, and there were some bills to deal with that didn't make the deadlines. So I think the housing issues are going to be a big part of it. I think a lot of the healthcare issues are going to be a big part of the closing, and then whether or not this film tax bill can pass, how that works into the final calculus, I think is going to be a big thing. I mean, I know how much work has been put into this by both Senator Lang and Assemblywoman Hagerty, and it would be heartbreaking to see this bill be amended as many times as it was, debated, discussed, pass the legislature, and get to the governor and have him veto it. I think that would be heartbreaking, but that is a scenario that I can envision happening, and for the very reasons that we're talking about, just the money issue.
Seen some interesting bills this session. Worked on some interesting bills this session that have blown up when I didn't expect them to. What have been some of the most surprising ones this session for you that you were hopeful for at the beginning of session, that maybe we talked about at the beginning of session, that we've been watching, that it either fizzled out or just won't make it till the end, or kind of blew up in a way that we didn't anticipate?
Yeah, I think I can think of a couple of those. The daylight saving bill, of course, was one that I've long cheered for, because I have a lot of. I mean, we all have our phones, and they're on time service, so we don't have to worry about that. Apple Watches, we have that. But I am a person with a lot of analog clocks and watches in my house, and that bill would literally save me about an hour a year, actually 2 hours a year, not having to roll everything back. And I was actually surprised how far that bill got through the process, because I am of the belief secretly that we will not change what we do until California does. I've got to say hats off to Selena LaRue Hatz, the assemblywoman from Reno. She did a great job on that bill. Great job articulating it. And when the California issue came up, she said, "Listen, I don't care what they do. This is look, they can do what they want to do. This is the state of Nevada. We got to do what's right for us." And she had a lot of good reasons for that. I think the other big surprise for me was, we've all seen these terrible cases of animal cruelty here in Clark County, and we all are familiar with the bulldog Reba, who was found taped inside a crate in the Vegas heat. And I don't think there's a single person in the state who is sane, who doesn't look at that and say this is a horrible thing. So a bill was brought to basically increase penalties for animal torture. As far as I can tell in the legislature, there is no pro-animal torture caucus. But for some reason, passing my understanding, in the Assembly Judiciary Committee, this bill just slipped by the wayside. And I was surprised by that. It must have been stuck to another piece of paper or so. I don't know how
Flip, it's so weird, isn't it, Steve?
I don't know how that happened, but it was malpractice by the chair of that
Yes.
committee, and it was malpractice for two reasons. One, it was a bill that obviously should have gotten a hearing on its merits, but number two, the people behind that bill are some of the most passionate people involved in any issue in the legislature, and they are not the type of people to say, well, you know what, we didn't get it this time, but we're going to come back next time. That's what Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch said about her time bill. She's like, we didn't get it this time. We're going to come back next time. The animal people are not so much. Not so much. They're like, oh, hell no. And they caused such a ruckus. This happened around Easter time. The irony is this happened around Easter time. The bill died on a Friday, but 3 days later was miraculously resurrected after calls and emails and outbursts from the community that supports this bill, the Reba's Law people. This bill was not only resurrected, it was given an exemption from all the rules, and it ultimately passed unanimously from the Assembly. And I'm almost positive it'll pass unanimously from the Senate as well. So that was a real surprise to me, because I would have thought, no, people who have been in politics for that long understand the dynamics here. And I think they grossly underestimated the passion of the people involved in these issues. We're all inured to this, right? Because we've seen bills live and die, and we get upset about some of them, and there are some that are you're very passionate about, and when they die you're mad about it, and all that. But these folks with Reba's Law, it's another level. It is another level, and they were never going to go away. And to simply, not even say, hey, we're not taking this bill up, but just to be like, okay, I guess we're done, gavel out. No, that was never going to work. And that was a surprise. That was a real surprise to me.
I think you answered the question of what happened to the bill. I think the chair and staff couldn't find the bill because it was Easter and it was in a cave somewhere with, the guy who Easter is all about, and it just had to come out of the cave.
When they came to the cave on Sunday, an angel appeared and said, "The bill is not here; it is risen just as it said."
Yeah, that's what happened. No malpractice here. Nothing wrong here.
And then Annette was blamed for riling up the animal people about the other bill.
They did not.
It said I can control the other animal people, which I
Nope.
cannot, for the
No,
record.
first of all, they did not
Nobody
get
can.
to rile them up, and second of
No,
all, no one can control the animal people. I don't care if
not even Jesus.
I don't care if you had guns, knives, those little poles with the little rope on the end that they use for animal. You cannot control the animal people. They're very passionate about that because they look at animals and somebody who is part of this group said, listen, we domesticated these animals, these dogs and cats. We domesticated them, and we have an obligation to take care of them now. And these animals can't speak for themselves, and when we see them mistreated, it's we've all seen the Humane Society commercials, or I guess it's called Humane World for Animals now, on TV with the poor dogs. Whose heart doesn't melt when they see that? Even Ira Hansen, who's trapped more animals than I think have been sold at pet stores in the entire history of the state of Nevada, is moved with compassion when he sees that kind of thing. So I mean, and I understand he was a yes on the other animal bill that's gone by the wayside this session as well. So, yeah, so it's an issue that the people, you do yourself a favor, look into these folks, listen to these folks for a little while, and realize, here's they are not going to go away, and they will make life difficult for you, and they'll remember. If you do the wrong thing, as far as they're concerned, what the wrong thing is, they will remember.
Animal people operate on a steroid version of FAFO. Fuck around and find out. Like steroids.
Steve, what else has surprised you this session? Like, what other things that have you been like, what are they doing? Or why are they doing this? Or what do you think people at home should know about this session? Because it has felt different than previous sessions. We're dealing with this federal government that's, frankly, in my opinion, out of control. We're dealing with political things that we haven't had to deal with in previous sessions, where the governor can't math at the beginning of session, screwed up the budget, and that's kind of set us on this path. There's been so much that's kind of played into this session that we haven't had to deal with in previous sessions. What surprised you?
Yeah, I will have to put a caveat on this. I wanted to spend a lot more time up there than I have been able to. And so I am looking at it from afar and just picking up on texting back and forth with lawmakers and texting back and forth with lobbyists and sources up there. And so I think you're right. I mean, I think this tremendous question mark that now hangs like a Damoclean sword over the legislature of whether or not we're going to have this money, whether or not the federal government is going to keep its promise. And I got to say that, there were people, including myself, when Obamacare was first passed, thanks and credit to the late, great Harry Reid, when that was passed, I told people, look, the match comes from 100 and it'll come down to 90 and it'll stay at 90. And they said, well, they could change it in the future. And I said, well, yeah, that's a theoretical possibility. Well, those naysayers were probably right, because now they're looking to change that. And so I think that is probably made the session a little bit different. Everybody, I think, feels that what they're doing right now is temporary, that, we're going to do this and we're going to try to, patch together as best we can a budget. And then we're just going to hope and pray that it doesn't get upended by what the federal government does and what the big, beautiful bill does. And I think it points up again how a 2-year, every other year for 4 months cycle of the legislature is no way to run a government. It's just, you cannot respond to things. You cannot respond to, if by, for example, there were a global pandemic, let's just say theoretically that happened. If there's a huge recession, just in the off chance that might happen. If there's a housing bubble that bursts because people were doing naughty things by putting subprime mortgages together and selling them as securities. If AI becomes self-aware and decides that human beings are the problem and need to be eradicated, if any of those things happen, meeting once every other year just doesn't cut it. And so you have seen, if you go back and look on the legislature's website, all you have to do is look, and you see, regular session, regular session, regular session, regular session, 99 comes and the 120 day is put in, regular, special, special, regular, special, special, special. And so it tells you that there's more work than can be done in that period of time, no matter how much foresight, no matter how good your experts are, your fiscal experts looking into the future, all that. It's just no way to run a railroad. But, what odds would you give me if I had a citizen initiative to say, repeal the 120-day limit on sessions, repeal the every other year constitutional provision, repeal the part-time legislature provision? I'd be laughed out of Nevada for proposing all of those things, even though it's patently obvious that something needs to change with the way we do it, because we're just seeing the same problems over and over again.
So, and then I'll turn it over to Maria. This will be my last question. All of this is couched in also, there's a lot of people in this building, because I'm sitting here, who want to run for something else. And term limits have contributed to that. You've got people who are eyeing attorney general. You have people who are eyeing governor. Third House was tonight, where the journalists all make fun of the legislators. Even Aaron Ford showed up for that. Never shows up for that stuff. And I was like, oh, I see you, right? Because he has aspirations to be the next governor. And so how much of this do you think is also playing into the politics for the end game? And what do you think that looks like coming out of this and going into 2026's election cycle?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Annette, because I can think of no better platform than 1 Minute Recess for me to announce with pride and purpose that I am announcing my candidacy for governor of the state. No,
Woo!
I'm told that I would have a
Yay.
couple 3 votes, but probably not enough to win.
You got 2 on this program.
I will tell you. And if I ever did run for governor, you guys would be among my first hires, because I could not do it without support of smart people. Politics is always playing a role in it, I think. I mean, you have 2 people who are both smart and incredibly effective lawmakers, Zach Conine and Nicole Cannizzaro, who want to be AG. I'm sure there's a Republican out there who might want to be attorney general, and you have Aaron Ford, who has made no secret of the fact that he wants to be governor and has announced his candidacy to be governor, and is suing Donald Trump, I think, almost daily now. I think it's almost daily. I see a new legal action come out. And, hey, we joke, but he has won quite a few of those rulings, at least the preliminary injunctions and temporary injunctions. He has won quite a few of those. And one of the criteria is you have to show a reasonable chance of success on the merits. And he has done so. He and his fellow attorney generals, who are in many ways comprise almost the entirety of the Democratic resistance to the Trump administration. So, but those things factor in, right? Those things factor in. I think some of these, we talked about the vetoed bills. I think some of those vetoed bills have been brought back for the sole purpose of saying, let's see how Lombardo acts when he's going to be on the ballot in 2 years. Let's see if his views change when he's going to be on the ballot in 2 years. Or does he want to hand us this issue for a campaign ad? So that part of that is going in there. And things that are happening within the session, they're all happening. And there are political backdrops to all of that. I mean, every lawmaker in there sees a political future, I think, for themselves, and acts accordingly, and says, well, I'd really like to support this bill, but, I've got to run for office in 2 years or 4 years, or I want to run for, a state controller or a lieutenant governor. I'm just kidding. Nobody ever sits around thinking about, I'm going to run for lieutenant governor. But it's, that's always a backdrop, and you can't get away from that. And, but I think there may be a cadre of those freshmen who got up and said, this is not what I thought it would be. And maybe I need to seek life elsewhere because this is really not my thing. And then you have people who are up there who you might not have thought would be good at it, but actually really are. I'm thinking of Assemblyman Brian Hibbets, who got a bill passed through the legislature that would make wrong way driving, which is usually caused by somebody being completely drunk, wrong way driving, a misdemeanor. This is a traffic offense. When Democrats are making most traffic offenses into civil infractions, he got them to go the other way and make a criminal penalty for this terrible problem, which has resulted in many people being injured or even killed in Nevada. That's skill. That is a skill. He got a tax break for cigar smokers. I'm acutely aware of this. I had to change shirts today due to the ashes that were on my other shirt from an unfortunate cigar incident earlier today before I came on your show. And so he got that through a democratically controlled legislature, a member of a minority party, and in that case, a super minority. He got that through. You have people like him who are good at it and are showing that they're good at it, and have a future in that business. And then you have other people who I think are just either they don't like it or they like it too much, but they're just no good at it. And so, you've got all that. So, we will see. We will see what happens in the and I'm sure there'll be a what they call a decent interval of about 20 minutes between the gavel falling and the announcements of campaigns.
Amazing. I did not know that legislating took skill. And I mean, I'm amazed that people didn't think that. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing that people are like, wow, this actually takes a lot of work, and I'm not getting paid anything basically for it.
Right.
So we've been talking a lot about, what the legislature should look like, and I want to know. You always have a list of things, people that should run for office, laws that should be changed. What are other things? This is my last question, and maybe we can end on this. On top of what we've talked about, what other changes, if we ever get there, should the legislature or legislators actually maybe take on so that we can be not a child state, but like an actual grown-up state that does things?
Yeah, I think probably the first one would be, and I should probably preface this by saying I think the only way any of these things are going to happen is by a citizen initiative. I think meeting every year is the first thing. Even if you wanted to do it in the context of the current limitation, you could maybe meet for 90 days in the odd numbered years, 30 days in the even numbered years to deal primarily with budget issues and maybe a few policy issues that come up. Doing that would be a huge change. Doing that would be a huge change. I'm not so naive as to think, we'll have a full-time legislature, a full-time staff, any of those things in the near future. But that one thing would be good. And then in politics in general, and these will definitely never come from the lawmaker, because the lawmakers benefit more from the current system than they would benefit from a change system. But I think Ira Hansen's idea, and it wasn't just him, there's other people propose this, of an independent redistricting commission that would draw new district lines in the state of Nevada without respect necessarily to political parties, observe every other rule of redistricting, respect natural boundaries, respect communities of interest, avoid drawing district lines in a racially discriminatory way, or that would split communities of interest. You do that, I think that would be one big thing towards making lawmakers appeal to a broader slice of the electorate than they otherwise would have. I think along those same lines, the open primaries, Steve Yeager has a bill, even though he said he wasn't going to bring a bill to this on this subject, but he did. That is a sort of like this. It would allow any nonpartisan to vote a partisan ballot of either party. That's not quite what open primaries are. Open primaries are everybody runs and you get to vote for the candidate you like. And then the top two vote getters go on to the general election. And, we may have in some areas, in some districts, we may have two Democrats, and in others we'll have two Republicans. And maybe a libertarian or an independent American. Maybe Janine Hansen will finally get a crack at a general election ballot. We'll see. She's certainly earned it. I'll tell you that. She's certainly earned a chance there. But I think those things, would cut into the power of the parties. And the parties do not want to give up their power. I mean, you saw that in the presidential preference primary. The Republicans held their own primary and refused to participate in the presidential preference primary that the state held because they didn't want to, they worried that Democrats were somehow secretly going to get in and vote for a terrible candidate to win. And so, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see people give up that power voluntarily. So that has to come from citizens. Now, they brought one last time with ranked choice, and I think combining those two killed it ultimately. Although it passed in one session, it was killed in the next session. I think if you brought those independently, I have a really good hunch that open primaries would probably pass. And I think if you could explain to people why a redistricting commission, as opposed to allowing the lawmakers to do the redistricting, was in their interests, in their political interests, assuming that they do not want, virulent partisanship at all times, I think that would go a long way too toward getting people to do that. And so redistricting reform, open primaries, and of course campaign finance reform. Those are some of the things that really that are vexing our current system and that are enshrined in this calcified, sclerotic set of laws and court decisions that we have, that we just have to break through that if we're going to have some real change. And I've read many books about this. I've gone, my hobby, I go to book festivals, and I can tell you, the panels that I go to, these are the things that are brought up time and time and time again as reforms. And I think there's a good reason for all of that. And so I think it's time to get it out of the Sunday book festival panel discussion and get it into the public discussion, and at the very least, let the people who defend the status quo defend their position.
Well, we wouldn't want him to have to do that, Steve. Oh, why should we let the partisan hacks have to defend their positions on things? It's only us peasants who have to do that. Anyways, so you're coming up on Saturday.
Yes, I will be there.
Super excited to have you up here. Super excited to have you lurking the halls with me.
Yes,
It's going to be my favorite part of session.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What are you most excited about, other than us being done?
I think, us being done is probably the number one excitement about that. I'm excited to see the end game for some of these bills and see what's going to happen with some of these bills and see if all that hard work pays off, or if it's back to the drawing board and all that. I really hope the head of Howard Hughes said if the film tax bill doesn't happen, they'll move on and look for other opportunities to invest and all of that. And I really hope that scenario doesn't play out, that if it doesn't happen this time, that they keep trying going forward in the future. I think that would be a shame to let that go. But and I've got my little chart here. of the vetoed bills. I'm going to be keeping close track to see if the results are the same or if they're different, and we'll be talking about that on Channel 13. I hope.
Well, everyone, make sure you tune in to Channel 13. Follow Steve on social media. He's always giving updates, especially on Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now. Yeah, he's going to be up here on Saturday with me, so follow along. There's lots of information that's going to be coming out over the next 6 days, and so you're going to want to definitely follow along with that. So, Steve, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for all you do, and I can't wait to have you up here with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. Keep doing what you guys doing. I love the podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of funny people, and I rarely laugh out loud. But your guys' podcast is an exception to that. I never miss it. I love listening to it, and so keep up the good work there. And is there an episode next week? Is there another episode?
Yeah, we're not quitting.
All right.
You get your wish.
Here.
We're not Sine Die. We got work to do.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. I think you guys should keep it going even when the legislature's out of session. You may need to explain the name or change the name, but
listen, it can be 1 minute recess all year long. It's not like anybody else is doing a podcast, so we'll do it.
That's true. That is true. And I guarantee there'll be stuff to fill it every week.
Oh, we can always talk shit, Steve. All right, Steve, thanks for spending your time with us. We appreciate you. Everybody follow along with Steve on social media and make sure you're following along with all the good reporting he's doing on Channel 13.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. All right, Maria. So, what are we doing next? Where are we? What time is it? What day is it?
Well, it is Tuesday, May 27th, year World War 2025.
Ugh.
And locally, Joshua trees could go extinct, so that's where we're at.
Maybe I should just get my Joshua tree tattoo, so I can always remember what they look like here on my arm.
Yeah, they won't have federal protection, so
neither do children. Neither do children. Neither do women. So why should the Joshua trees have protection if
humans
women
first.
And children and people with disabilities don't have protection? Yeah, apparently that's according to our legislature. We can't possibly deal with animal issues, so why would we? Because we can't deal with people issues either. So here we are.
Yep.
So that was in the Nevada Independent, right? Without federal protection, they're going extinct.
Yeah, so Harry Reid is rolling in his grave because they only grow an inch a year.
Yeah, and they were his favorite, so that's fine. Everything's great. Everything's dying.
Yeah.
I'm just stuck here at this building. Also, what is going on? I don't even know. I don't even have words at this point anymore. I'm so tired.
That is, for folks listening or watching, that is the pre-Sine Die fog. You have no idea what's happening outside of that building.
I'm trapped in this building all day.
Well, while you've been the other things that have been happening, I'll just unleash them to you, all of them. Loco, lowdown, to what the fuck.
Yeah,
and you just react.
Hit me.
Rapid,
rapid fire.
There were anti-Semitic and racist vandals in Reno High School. We're going to get an airport in Las Vegas. The biggest Russian attack in Kyiv happened.
Hang on. Let's stop with the first two. So I saw the students acting like fucking fools in Reno High School, breaking TVs, vandalizing the school, putting up anti-Semitic nonsense, vile hate. Yeah, no, those kids should not be allowed to walk at graduation, especially if they know who the kids are. And those kids should be held accountable because that's unacceptable behavior. I'm not saying put them in jail, but I am saying we need to hold them accountable because real life is accountability, and clearly they're old enough to know better. And then also the environmental review process for the second airport. That airport's supposed to be starting to move. That's right next to a May National Monument, which you and I worked on at our previous job. I don't know how they haven't already done an environmental review at this point because didn't we do that as part of May, I thought? I don't know.
I think so.
I thought we did that already, but okay. It's butting up against a national monument. It's fine. We figured it out. We figured out the airspace. Let's just move forward. I don't know.
Let's get one. It'll ease up traffic, getting out of Reed International.
Especially if they put the international flights out at Ivanpah. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah, it might help with, tourism down there.
Well, and there's all those Joshua trees down there. Maybe they can help prevent the extinction. That'd be nice.
Yeah. When we get European environmentalists to care, if they still want to come to Vegas, they might, really care.
All right, we're moving on to what the fuck is going on in the world, where we unpack headlines beyond Nevada. I've been trying to loosely pay attention because there's a lot of shit coming at me right now. But apparently, what did Trump call Putin this week? A maniac?
A maniac. He has no idea. He's known him for so long. Well, there was a whole telenovela. At first, it was like a, ceasefire, right? That's what we've been hearing for weeks and months. Then all of a sudden, largest attack happens in Kyiv, like really bad. They were getting bombed.
Horrible.
And then he comes out, because clearly that shows that there's no ceasefire, and he says, I have no idea what Putin's doing. He's always been such a great guy. He's turned into a maniac. I'm going to talk to him. And then he starts to threaten him that he's playing with fire, and that this is the bearing the lead, though, is that he tweets, if it wasn't for me, so many bad things would have happened to Russia, which is like, oh, so you do work for Russia. Thank you for...
Well, right. He's like saying the quiet part out loud now. Like, I'm just like, bro.
Yeah.
Do you hear yourself?
I think Putin is gaslighting Trump, and Trump is gaslighting us. It's just like a human centipede of gaslighting.
I feel like Putin probably is gaslighting Trump for sure. But I don't think Trump is smart enough to gaslight all of us because I just think he's a fucking idiot. So maybe he just really didn't know that Putin was a warmonger and
he works for him.
Yeah, I don't know, Maria. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. I'm just a girl in a pink dress at the Nevada legislature trying to make sense of the world around me. And it's really hard right now.
Don't try to do that.
I don't know.
Don't try to make sense.
Yeah.
Not in these times.
Every day I just open up my shit and I'm like, what is fucking crispy face RFK doing this week? First he's swimming in shit. Now he's telling me I can't have a COVID shot. Like, I'm just trying to make sense of the world, friends. That's it. That's all.
No. Putting you on good news?
Sure.
Good news is Germany is telling Israel that it has had it up to here with what they're doing in Gaza, and they haven't released yet what they're thinking about doing, but they're basically saying, if you don't listen to what the world is, other than the US, is saying, we will start taking measures, at least on the part of...
In time. Like, come on, Germany. I know you're trying to atone for your bullshit during World War II, and good on you. I'm proud of you. But also, we shouldn't be killing innocent people in Gaza.
No. Yeah.
Which, speaking of, we gotta talk about something that comes all the way back to this. So, there was some drama here at the Andy Ledge on Friday. So, there was a walkout that happened during a vote on a bill the bill was brought by two students. James Orenshaw ran it. Senator James Orenshaw ran it. Of course, we do not support anti-Semitism. Like, full stop. This bill, however, and this was explained to me by one of the lobbyists who worked for various pro-Israel groups, so they were explaining it to me. Basically, the bill also went a step further and said, if you criticize Israel, that is technically being anti-Semitic, which I fundamentally disagree with, and I can criticize any government in this world and not criticize people's religion. That is how that works. And I can criticize the government of Israel, just like I criticize this one. So the bill basically said, you are anti-Semitic if you criticize Jewish people or if you criticize the state of Israel. No. So ACLU got involved and was like, yeah, no, that's freedom of speech, and like people are allowed to criticize the government of Israel. Legislators on the assembly side sat out on the vote on this because they were not taking a vote on this, and it put them in a weird spot, right? Like, you're not saying you want to vote for anti-Semitism, but also you're like forced to vote for this thing that says you can't criticize the government of Israel. I would have been torn on this too. And so there was a huge kerfuffle on Friday in the assembly chamber about people sitting it out or people voting no because of what the bill actually did. And when you come for me in the fucking chat, come correct, because read the bill and read what the bill does, because I've been walking around this building trying to figure out what was going on with that bill. And so it is more nuanced than people think. And again, it is one thing to say you can't go after people for their religion. 100%. Nobody should ever do that. But it is another thing to say you can't criticize a legitimate government.
The government of Israel does not equals the religion of Judaism.
No.
I mean, people, and this is what...
Don't conflate the two.
No, and especially, like, look at actual Israelis that live there. They're not 100% for Netanyahu. How many actual corruption charges does the man have? And people want them to go through. He's like Trump, 100%. Basically. And yes, what we're doing by saying you can't criticize them is we're basically saying he or the government is special. They're not. They're just like any other government. No. And, like his own people, criticize him. And by people, I mean Israeli citizens, which are also not just Jewish. That also means me criticizing the government of Israel, I'm criticizing a government, not a religion, because how many times have, like, when we talk about that part of the world, not everybody that lives in Iran is a certain type of Muslim. Not everybody that lives in Israel is Jewish. We're not criticizing your faith. We're criticizing your leader. You can criticize Trump. Please criticize Trump. I will not take it personally.
I invite it. In fact, how often, but even our own party, right? How often have you and I, in our time in this building, criticized Democrats? How many times have we criticized our own side of things? Hell, on our show last week, we freaking did it. It is a correct thing to do to hold governments accountable, to hold elected officials accountable, especially when they're committing atrocities. So, anyways, if y'all want the tea, go back and watch Friday's floor session in the Nevada Assembly. It was late. It was like 8 or 9 o'clock. And all of a sudden you're like, where did everybody go? That's the tea. And it relates to the national politics, so I wanted to tie it in here because I forgot to bring it up with Steve. Because I'm running on approximately 4 hours of sleep. Anyways, Steve Madden says we're crashing the economy.
If folks haven't watched this video, you have to watch it because he just unloads on Trump. Like, he speaks our language. I don't know how many fucks he says, how many times he says it's stupid. But he basically, so it's a fashion podcast, and the host asks him, about his line, and he's basically saying, yeah, the price of shoes are going up. And not just mine, but everybody's. And he goes, you can thank your government for that. And he just unleashes on Trump and basically calls him how can I say? He basically says it was actual manufacturers that are hurting now that created the U.S. economy, not people that buy up buildings and stocks like Trump. Trump is basically not a businessman and not what people should idolize. It's fantastic. It's amazing. And I think, shit, maybe he should run for president.
Listen, I'm just scrolling through CNN right now, being like, what else did I miss today? Trump is growing more furious with Putin. No shit. Like, hello, wake up. U.S. allies watch to see if Trump actually follows through with his Putin tough talk.
Yeah, will it actually, or is this just a play? Because all of Russian television is basically laughing at Trump, going, ha, that's so cute.
Let's see here. President of Finland says Putin made one of the biggest strategic and tactical mistakes in recent military history. Well, he's not thinking. Come on. And my favorite headline of all, and this is the thing that we'll close this with, because it is my favorite headline of all today. SpaceX, and it's a live update, so this is happening in real time while we're taping this, everyone. SpaceX loses control of Starship during night test flight of the mega rocket. Fuck you, Elon. Fuck you. Always. Great job, Elon. Failing more. Just keep on failing, buddy. Most likely. Or, like, hiring 18-year-olds like he did at Doge, which have no business doing this work. Or, the failure of his car company. Just on and on and on. The general failure of Elon Musk. Whatever. Here we are. Well, my current headache is residing at my home because we got bad news on Squigs today, and I told you about that. Squiggy's my dog, and we got some bad news, but hopefully he's going to be fine. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get home now and if we're canceling everything. Political news. Hot take and headache. This has been the thing that's chapped my ass the most this week. Trump pardons reality show couple convicted of bank fraud and tax crimes. I don't know if you see these weird ass motherfuckers. They've been on Bravo before, so this is where like our worlds start to collide, Maria. But Todd and Julie Crisley, or whatever the fuck their names are, these weirdos that, I'm sorry, no offense to gay people, but this dude is totally gay. I don't know. She is his beard, 100%. Like, bro, just come out of the closet. You've already been to jail now. You would be much happier. We would support you. But apparently these weirdos, much like the Michelle Fiore thing, so Donald Trump has a thing for pardoning actual criminals, they were sentenced to a lengthy prison term in 2022 for conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million, according to a White House official. So this dude, Donald Trump, loves people who steal from police officer funds, Michelle Fiore. He loves pardoning these people. He loves pardoning sex offenders. He surrounds himself with the best people. Truly disgusting. So anyways, that's my hot take. These people are criminals and they should be in jail. Anyways, what's your hot take for the week? What's your headache for the week? Well, that's fun. Well, also, does he currently have a uterus? Can he carry them? Then he probably shouldn't make those decisions. Really? Also, what about that Argentinian dude I sent you today with standing next to Mr. Crispy Face? RFK. This one's in shit. But let's make America healthy again. Yeah, you're the one I'm gonna take advice from, Poop Face. Do you think Bobby Kennedy is literally like rolling just like in his grave? Like he's gotta be, right? Because he was so amazing. Bobby Kennedy was arguably better than JFK, in my humble opinion. And then he sprouted this full. No, I'm not. I got my vaccine updated again because I wasn't playing around. I was like, give me another dose because I know this dumb motherfucker's going to take away all my vaccines. So hit me with it. Friends, let me tell you this now on my soapbox of being a vaccine lover if you're able to get it. Go get your vaccines updated right now because every single vaccine is going to become harder and harder to get. Fun fact, I got my polio vaccine updated in January. Everybody can get an updated polio vaccine. Just go to your local pharmacy and ask for it. I am too pretty for polio. The final bell. We're too pretty for polio. Anyways, let's continue, Maria. Let's close her out. You can go on the state website. There's a whole ass state website. Friends, will put it in the chat. Go on and see what you got as a child and make sure it's all updated. Need Hep A, Hep B, Hep C? You got it. It'll tell you. Get that HPV vaccine. Y'all, follow along. If you need questions answered about the NB Ledge, text me, call me, Facebook message me, like whatever, you know where to find me. Yeah, I'm gonna be here through the end. So the end is midnight on Monday night. So wish me luck, everyone, and I'll be back with you next week to tell you all the shenanigans that happen in Carson City. So thanks for joining us. Make sure you share this with your friends. Be back next week if I'm still alive. Hunger Games.